South Korea's low birth rate has been an issue for many years. In 2024, the total fertility rate is only 0.75, the lowest in the OECD countries. Many people have placed the financial pressure, strong social competition, and even the changing in youth perspective as the focus of such decline. In this video, NOVAsia will interview a number of Korean female guests who offer their takes on the country's concern.
안녕하세요. 저는 24살 함채련이라고 하고요. 동물생명공학이랑 미생물학을 전공했고 지난 6월에 마지막 학기를 마치고 현재는 졸업 유예 상태로 제약회사 QC를 준비하고 있는 취준생입니다.
Hello, my name is Heejin Jung, and I have graduated from the Sociology and Linguistics Department from Korea University.
I'm an office worker and my age is 31. I work at a non-profit corporation located in Seoul.
저는 아직까지는 아이를 갖고 싶은 생각이 없습니다. 솔직히 아이를 갖기 전에 결혼을 먼저 생각해야 되는데 일단 결혼 생각도 딱히는 없고요. 어떻게 변할지 모르겠지만 지금은 별로 갖고 싶지 않다고 생각해요.
I like kids. I really like kids, so if the situation allows, I would definitely want to have a kid, more than one kid in my life.
I do want to have kids in the future, yes.
여자 친구들의 경우 소수의 친구들만 아이를 갖고 싶다고 말을 하고요. 대부분은 갖고 싶지 않다고 얘기하는 친구들이 많았어요.
Most of my friends around me want kids no matter the gender.
We talk about this a lot. It's like a casual question that I ask around my people, around the girls around me. Mostly they're uncertain about that. I think it's still a distant question. Some say yes, some say no, depending on their preferences, but mostly they're very unclear. They feel it's like a question that doesn't really affect them for the moment. They're more focused on the careers.
제 개인적인 생각에 한국은 아이를 키우기에 그렇게 좋지 않은 나라라고 생각이 듭니다. 그 이유는 아직까지 한국이 좋은 대학을 나와야 뭔가 성공한다는 그런 인식이 아직까지도 좀 만연해 있고 그러다 보니까 이제 아이들이 뭐 꿈이나 진로에 대해서 생각하기 전에 그냥 무작정 좋은 대학에 들어가기 위해서 그런 교육을 받는 것 같아서 그러니까 아이들이 생각할 그런 시간을 안 주는 것 같아요. 우리나라 교육 제도상.
For me, the expected challenge while raising kids in the future will be that in Korea, people expect everything to become identical without any differences. This is the main cause of people to feel peer pressure to live the similar lifestyle and economical status, even though the feasibility is very low for this scenario to work in the reality. This phenomenon is easily found in Asian countries, but I feel it's more intense in Korea.
I think the issues of raising kids in Korea is the competitive atmosphere we have. I feel sorry for the future babies who will have to born in Korea and go through all the competition from the really early age, and namely the education to enter a good university and later on the jobs and etc. I think that is the number one problem we have regarding the low birth rate. I don't think Korea is the only country that has this competitive environment, but definitely is unique country. I think it's specific and unique to Korea that the competitiveness is influencing the birth rate, and that's in that serious level.
Giving birth is a complex decision for many women as it carries an impact on their lives. It involves navigating a blend of emotional, physical, and societal factors. For many women, the choice to have children conflicts with their career aspirations, as they often face challenges in balancing professional goals with the demands of motherhood. Helene, at 41, is currently a student pursuing graduate degree at Yonsei GSIS. She is also a mom of 3 kids. She has 17 years of experience in the ICT and education sector. 8 of those years were being CEO of her own business. However, 3 years ago, she gave up her own business because she felt that she could no longer juggle 3 children and work.
My name is Helene. I'm 41 years old. I'm currently a student pursuing PIC at GSIS. Yonsei. I got married quite early, actually. I got married when I was 26, and I have 3 kids. My firstborn is a freshman in high school, and I also have a middle schooler. But then I also have a 32-month-old at home. It's been quite a juggle to maintain a corporate career as well as 3 kids and a family life at home. First, when it came to just my life as Helen, there was no Helen anymore. It was just mom and children. So, because, when you have little children, you are their world and you just need to be there, right? So there was no time for myself. It was when I would come home from work, it was kids, 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 and all the housework after that. I was trying to juggle 2 full-time jobs as a mom and as a worker, as an employee of a company. There were instances where my children will be sick and they can't go to daycare. Then I would be late to work. That was really a difficult thing to juggle. And from a career perspective, I was a very big workaholic because of my children and wanting to prioritize and making sure I have time for them. My promotions started getting delayed. There were days when I had to leave my work early to get my kids who were sick because the daycare would ask me to pick them up. But then I would look at my team, we're very busy, but then to make that to ask for that day off or a half day was very difficult, especially in the Korean corporate world where, there is no work-life balance. It's just work, right? And therefore, a lot of the people on your team found it difficult to understand your situation or give you breaks. That's when I said, you know what? It's time for me to leave and do my own thing because I didn't want to leave the workforce. And so that's when I started my own company, and I thought I would be able to have more time for myself because it's my own company. I thought CEOs got to do whatever they wanted. I was very wrong. It was a 24/7 job again because I needed to keep it alive for all the employees that I was responsible for. I think that's when I was no longer able to balance everything, and I kind of went more towards my career. My kids rarely ever saw me. I was flying back from Korea, Seoul to US 16 times a year. I was flying to Jeju every weekend. I remember them always saying, I would love for mommy to come home. I want mommy home. Why do you work? And so that guilt, I think, is really hard for women who are working because your children are just going to want you home to be there for them. Yeah. And then when I had my 3rd child, that's when I realized I can't do both, and I just had to give up my business, and then I became a full-time mom only. But then I became very restless after about 2 years, and so when my youngest became 2, that's when I applied for GSIS. As a mom, if we don't think about that financial aspect, raising children in Korea is a lot easier because I've raised my kids here in Korea, I've raised them in the US, and I've raised them in the Philippines. It's much easier to raise kids here in that everything is convenient. If you can't pick up your kids, you can do Kakao Taxi and you can do it by app. Just I think generally as a whole, it's easier to raise kids as a mom. For the kids, I don't think it is the best place to grow up because of that competition. And I feel like in the schools, kids are kind of set up to fail because there is so much competition. Oh, here, let me put it this way. There seems to be a hierarchy among students depending on your grades. And I think because of that hierarchy, students that feel like they're at the bottom of the hierarchy, they tend to act out physically. It's just something that I've kind of noticed, or my children have kind of mentioned to me that that's what they're feeling like. And it's very difficult for them to maintain their place at the top of this hierarchy. It's too stressful for them. So, for example, even last night, my middle schooler was staying up till 2 a.m., but she gets up at 6. I don't think 4 hours of sleep is healthy for a middle schooler. So I told her, right now, sleep is more important, so can you just go to bed? If your teacher says something about your homework not being done, just tell her I'm sorry. And if she says something to me, I'll tell her I'm sorry and we can move on. She started crying. Mom, it's not just about my grades. It's about the hierarchy. I need to maintain my status. And I was so heartbroken because I don't think she needs to live like that.
Is she in a public school?
She is in she's currently in a foreign school right now. And even in a foreign school, still, it's like that because a lot of the student population within the foreign school aren't actually international students. They have a foreign passport, but it's because their dad is a foreigner or their mom is a foreigner, but they grew up in Korea. It's not that different from a Korean school.
For many Korean families, raising children means a huge financial burden due to societal expectations. The cost of living, particularly in major cities like Seoul, is high, with expenses related to housing, education, and healthcare adding up quickly. Moreover, private education and tutoring are seen as essential to ensuring children's future success, further driving up the costs of raising a child.
There's definitely a major financial pressure because I think the Korean society recognizes, I feel like, that social mobility is very closely related with education. Because of that, all the mothers or parents want to provide the best for their child, and that's very natural, right? But because of that, there is a hyper competition, and that's why the hagwon industry or the private education sector is so big in Korea. There is that additional financial pressure where they're having to send their children to all these additional educational institutions aside from their regular school. So that in itself is a big financial burden for the families. But also, I think because majority of the families have one or two children, I think they also want to make sure that, they have the top-notch technology, dress well, have those brands, because they don't want their child to be, I guess, looked down upon by others. So I think there is that tinge of materialism within our society as well that's becoming a social problem.
Actually, I don't think we need that much amount of money to raise a kid, but to raise a kid in a good condition to make the kid successful in the future and let him or her grow as a successful adult, then we need a lot of investment, like financial investment. And that's why we think we need a lot of money to educate the child and give them provide them good environment, etc. Yeah, so it all root resides in the competitiveness, I think, the comparison to be better than other kids.
Apart from financial pressure, the perspective towards having children has shifted significantly across generations. Older generations, especially those who grew up in the mid-20th century, often held traditional views that emphasized family and child raising as central to a woman's role. However, the younger generations are redefining priorities, placing greater emphasis on careers, personal ambitions, along with growing concerns over the high costs of raising kids.
When I was in college, marriage was a definite thing that you do in life, right? And therefore, or that was the cultural atmosphere amongst me and my peers in our 20s. And I'm sure a lot of the people in their 40s and 50s maybe even would agree with me. And so we tried to get married before we turned 30. It was very family-centered, I guess, society for the women. But I think just in retrospect, what I've come to understand was the generation before me, it was a generation where the dads worked and the moms kind of stayed at home, and that was a given. That was the norm. I remember my mom telling me that her parents told her that there's no need for her to go to college because she's just going to get married and have kids anyways. So my mom always, for me and my sister, said, study. That's how you are going to get what you want in life. And so my sister, who's a doctor, also, she went to Seoul National University. I went to Yonsei. You can kind of understand like how my mom was like, please study and, do something for yourself. Don't be a stay-at-home mom like me, right? Realize your dream, realize your talents. You're smart, you're intelligent. So my generation is a generation where we still had that cultural atmosphere where women were kind of, I guess, pressured to get married before we turned too old, I guess, in the society's eyes. But we were very highly educated, and so we wanted to work. And so we are that generation where we started, both the husband and the wife started working equally. And so the children would stay at home without mom and dad, right? And that became more of a norm for us. Just like my children, there was never anybody home except for their nanny coming in to care for them. And then when they went to school, then they really didn't have anyone at home to fend for them. And that's why we had that hagwons, kids staying to get all these different hagwons. So I think that's the generation that followed. And so then what's happening now is my generation is saying, having both is too hard. But I found that my mom's always told me, I don't want to be home. And I'm finding, if I'm not home, it's too hard to juggle both. So now I find myself telling my two daughters, hey, just do one, be yourself, do what you want to do, right? So I think that's kind of what the trend is, not just for myself, but when I talk to my friends, it's kind of a general consensus. I don't think everyone will agree, but it's kind of what myself and my friends have kind of come to think.
To encourage family growth, the South Korean government has been working to create a more supportive environment for young couples. In recent years, policymakers have introduced various measures, including financial incentives such as cash allowances, tax breaks, and subsidies for childcare. Despite the measures, the challenge still remains, and debates continue over the most effective strategies to support families and encourage sustainable population growth.
2024년 기준으로 이제 정부가 하고 있는 출산 관련 정책이나 혜택들 중에는 뭐 임신 바우처나 첫 만남 이용권 아니면은 뭐 출산 휴가 제도를 늘린다던가 이런 제도를 알고 있고, 그치만 그게 현실적으로 자유롭게 사용할 수 있는 기업이 적다고 아직까지는 생각이 들어서 그게 좀 자유롭게 이용할 수 있게끔 사회적 인식이 좀 변화돼야 된다고 생각합니다.
I know that there are some policies to increase the birth rate. Like, for example, there's this housing subscription savings account that when you save a certain amount of money, then you can bid on winning an apartment. Like newly married couples or the couple with a newborn has a highest priority to win the apartment.
Right now, when people get married and try to get a house, or if you have a newborn, it's my understanding that they will lower your interest rate for the mortgage that you are taking out to get a house. If you have a newborn, I think nowadays they increased it even more. But when I had my third child, they supported my medical bills. Well, they gave me 1 million won support, like a voucher that I can use up to 1 million won for my medical bills during my pregnancy. After my child was born, depending on the gu where your child is born, they give you like a welcome to the family voucher. I remember for my firstborn, who was born in Seodaemun-gu, they gave her 50,000 won, which is like 1 can of, I guess, powdered milk. But my third got 1 million won voucher. It's my understanding that in Gangnam-gu, if you have your third child, they will give you a welcome voucher of 10 million. So there's like that big difference depending on where you live in the city. Also, they give, if you are not sending your child to daycare, they will support, it's called a parent allowance. And so they will support you 300,000 won from the federal government in Korea, I guess, or the general government in Korea. And the Seoul government will give you 100,000 won, so that's 400,000 won. But as my child is going to daycare, then the daycare becomes free where the government pays for that, and they don't give me the 300 won. But then the Seoul still gives me the 100,000 won. And if grandparents help support you after daycare hours until you come home from work. Then if the grandparents fulfill up to 40 hours a month, then the city will give the grandparents or the parents an allowance of 400,000 won to additionally support the grandparents and maybe give them a little bit of incentive. When you have 3 kids, they give you a little bit of discount on your electricity bills as well as your gas bills for the winter because you have to heat your house. So those are some other things that kind of help.
제 생각에는 이러한 정책들이 물론 이론적으로는 도움이 상당히 된다고 생각하는데 이거를 이제 실제로 사용할 수 있어야지 도움이 된다고 생각해요. 근데 현실적으로 아까 말씀드렸다시피 사용하기 좀 꺼려진다든지 아니면 주변의 눈치를 많이 봐야 되는 상황이니까 좀 자유롭게 사용할 수 있는 그런 사회적인 분위기가 만들어져야 된다고 생각합니다.
I think it's helpful, but not that much as a woman to make a decision whether to have kids or not. So I don't take these policies as the ultimate resolution for raising the fertility rate.
It is helpful in some way, I think, for those that already have in mind, to have a kid and then less money. I think that can be helpful for those couples. But the problem lies in the culture, I think. So it doesn't radically change the situation. It's this perception that the kids aren't happy in Korea and that women still have to compromise some part of their personal or professional life. This perception is affecting the low birth rate. So just solving the monetary problem wouldn't necessarily dramatically increase the birth rate in Korea.
They are helpful in improving the standard of living for families with many children. Help them feel like there is that little bit of support, like someone's going to be helping pay for the diapers or for the milk. But then will those incentives make a woman who has an exciting career ahead of her or who is struggling to stay in the fierce competition of the corporate world, or as a small business owner, want to take a break and have kids or want to juggle having both? Definitely not.
So they didn't solve
the core problem.
They didn't.
That's right. If you were to ask me, then what could the government do? It really does make me wonder because I have no answers. I have 3 kids because I wanted a big family, because I come from a big family. My parents had 4 children, and I love that. It wasn't any of those other incentives that made us make those decisions, and I was willing to, take a step back from work, give up my business, so that we can have that big family, because it's what we wanted. And we would have made that decision regardless of the incentives. But then if you think about the way the society works right now and what it's like in the corporate world, or what it's like if you're a small business owner, because some women become small business owners, right? If they're trying to survive that, what would be a reason why they would want to have kids? What would be an external incentive? I don't think there is an external. It would have to be an internal incentive, right? I'm willing to stop because there's just no way.
I think we just have to try to cool down the overheated competition in Korea, especially for having a good life. You have to be better than others. This tendency to keep comparing yourself or comparing your kid to others, and also putting the money as one of the core values of happiness. That's also money or reputation as core value of happiness. That is also affecting the situation, affecting the current status. Growing, it should be fun, and we should provide kids this happy environment that doesn't include any competition or worries about their future. Or I've seen an interview asking kids about their future jobs, their future career that they wish to be, and a lot of them mention money or reputation. I want a job that gives me reputation and money, but that shouldn't be the core value. That shouldn't be the priority for young ones. They should be naiver. They should be more innocent and just enjoy. We have to change the perception. They should make Korea a happier place for kids.
지금이랑 비슷하거나 더 떨어질 거라고 생각합니다. 왜냐하면 지금 제 또래 친구들이 이제 5년에서 10년 뒤에 결혼을 하고 아이를 낳을 그런 세대라고 생각하는데 일단 제 친구들은 결혼 생각이 없는 친구들이 많고요. 사회적으로도 제 친구들 말고도 지금 MZ 세대들이 결혼 생각이 많이 없다고 생각이 돼서
I think so. As I mentioned before, changing the perception is a very gradual process and it will continue falling. But if we try, maybe if we start now, then the fall would be more gradual, I think. It wouldn't fall drastically. Maybe we can still decrease the speed a little bit.
I understand that there is a general understanding in the public that, the rate of our birth rate declining is I guess detrimental, right? It's very alarming for the country. But even though we understand that, I think all the women are saying, okay, so you have kids, not me, right? It's that trend or that movement I don't think is going to change anytime soon.
In June 2024, South Korean government declared that the country is in a demographic national emergency due to its declining population. President Jung outlined three main areas focused on balancing work and life, improving childcare, and providing better housing to address the complex issues. Is the declining birth rate really a crisis to the nation? Let's hear about our guest's thoughts.
I do believe it is an emergency crisis. I was reading the news the other day and they said that up to my generation, like the 40s, there's a lot of us. And so we don't feel it yet in the workplace. But we see the changes happening in the schools. Many schools are shutting down because there just isn't enough kids. Even my husband's school, they're looking to merge with a nearby school in the next 5 to 10 years because there's not enough students to keep both open. And that means a big job loss for a lot of the teachers, right? And so we see how the movement is happening with the younger generation. And so I think this is a good time to say, we have a crisis, this is an emergency, we need to do something, because by the time these kids who are in school become adults, it's already too late. Because things like this, or shifting a trend, changing a cultural atmosphere takes time, right? And so we need that buffer time to make changes.
In fact, people, take this very serious. Actually, there was an announcement with the president's intention to create a special ministry, to deal with the population issues. But is it a crisis? I mean, there's another, group of people think that, actually we have been talking about overpopulation. Yeah, too many people on the planet that has an impact on the environment and so on. We have to think about what is the right size of the population. I mean, 2.1. A lot of OECD countries cannot meet 2.1, which is the replacement rate. So we need to have reasonable target. Definitely depopulation has an impact on the economy. It cannot be dynamic with a less population. The workforce is aging and lacking of a younger workforce. It affects on the productivities, total volumes of the business. Also, it has an impact on the innovation and creativity in what we do. In that sense, definitely we are taking it very serious.
As the birth rate continues declining, other societal issues are rising in parallel. With one of the lowest fertility rates in the world, the nation faces an aging population, leading to a shrinking workforce and increasing pressure on social welfare systems. Additionally, the declining fertility rate is affecting social structures, with fewer families opting for traditional child-rearing, resulting in a more isolated and individualistic society.
I think one of the examples can be loneliness, right? Because, I mean, family provides you with strong a mental support. I know UK and Japan, they have Ministry of Loneliness. So starting from 2018, which means that not only just very tangible or visible issues, the country's a government is now looking at the social issues as well. If we address the loneliness issues, for example, that is not directly related to the birth rate, but I think it can have a secondary impact because people feel more connected and supported might be relevant.
As a mom, I've recognized that because of the decline in birth rate, meaning families have 1 or 2 children as opposed to the 4 or 5 or the 5 and the 6 that my parents experienced, I think usually the moms, they really want their child to get the best education and I guess the so considered most lucrative job. And that's why right now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is a major shift for children trying to get into medical schools. Just last week, I read a news article that talked about South Korea's obsession with medical schools. Many students, starting with 4th grade, already start preparing for med school in Korea. But we don't gain as much traction or preparation in any other schools. And that's why I think because of that shift, other fields get overlooked. Other fields will start lacking workforce that have been educated and prepared and trained for that area. And even in the children's mind, they all think, oh, becoming a doctor is the most lucrative job. I don't want to do anything else, right? So if they have that already implanted in their young minds, I feel like we don't develop their best potential because they might not be the best doctor. Maybe they'll be the best scientist or mathematician or, a software designer or an artist. But there's such a big push towards the medical school. I feel like in not yours, but in my children's or my youngest generation, there will be many sectors that just lack people because there's too many who are trying to get into one. And so there's like an increase of or a hyper competition in one sector, not enough people, talented people in other sectors.
What are the reasons behind the trend? Like more and more students want to go to the medical school.
I thought about that. 2 of my three siblings are doctors and they're professors at Yonsei and professors at Seoul National. And I think it's because of job security. That was my take on it because I recognized that after med school, my siblings surely had jobs, right? They were doctors. For myself, it was very difficult to get a job. There's less job security in other sectors, I felt like. And, when my sister took a break, she could go back to being a doctor. When I took a break, I couldn't get back in because there's so many other people who were, coming up into that job. Yeah.
In response to South Korea's declining birth rate and the population shrinkage, the government is increasingly turning to migrant workers to sustain economic growth and address labor shortages. However, the public opinion on the influx of migrant workers remains divided, reflecting the country's complex relationship with globalization and its traditionally homogeneous society.
한국에서는 농업이나 제조업 분야에서 외국인 노동자를 이미 많이 고용하고 있다고 생각합니다. 근데 즉각적으로 인력 부족의 문제는 해결할 수 있겠지만 이제 장기적으로 봤을 때는 오히려 우리나라 사람들의 일자리를 뺏을 수도 있고 또 이게 장기적으로는 해결하기 힘든 문제라고 생각합니다.
If you visit the outskirts of Seoul, you will find many cities full of migrant workers. This immigration has been already happening for some time. However, I don't support this change in Korea due to cultural and historical background. Korea stayed as a homogeneous country for a very long time, unlike the other developed countries, which most are Western nations. These Western countries have the history of being the ruling country of colonization. They have centuries of experience to adjust and coexist with other ethnic groups and also have the responsibility descending from their past. However, Korea is not the case. We are not yet ready to welcome people with strong religions and exotic cultural backgrounds, and this will lead to national conflict in the future when the population of migrant workers accumulate enough to raise their voice.
I was interested in this topic and I took some courses in my university regarding the multiculturalism in Korea and like international immigration. And I think Korea is a very homogeneous society, although in reality it isn't. A lot of people think that Korea is a homogeneous society and they are kind of exclusive Koreans. So they're not very open about the new immigration. And especially, I think the biggest percentage of foreign immigrants workers are from low income countries, from developing countries in Southeast Asia, and we have a very strong stigma around them. So they also have their own specific, place to live, their own district where they're living, and there is this stigma. And if we don't solve the perception towards the immigrant population, then the integration and inclusion of foreign workforces will be a big challenge for us. So I think that's like one of the pending issue we have to solve, the perception.
Society is constantly changing, right? And we need to adapt to it. And I think, while, we take pride in our homogeneity, I think as a homogeneous country, there's to a certain degree, we want to keep it that way. But I think inviting migrant workers or scouting elites into our society, I think that's a very healthy way to go. Some people might think, oh, but if we invite a lot of migrant workers, then that takes away our jobs. But then if you think about it, it goes both ways, right? If we invite a lot of people in, we can also have a lot of programs where we can have people go out. And I think because we are becoming more and more of a globalized society where our companies no longer only work for the Korean market, but they're trying to expand to outside markets, then of course it will benefit our country to invite foreign workers into our companies who will help our companies adapt to those different locations and be more strategic in expanding. So then we will have more and more multinational companies that adapt well to the locations where they're going into. So I think that it's going to be very helpful. But then of course there will be trial and errors, like I mentioned about how we invited 100 Philippine nannies to Seoul to help ease the problem with women trying to look for nannies. But then I told you that there has been a lot of problems and issues where nannies run away, or because there's that language barrier where, we can't really communicate. But I think it's something that as a society we do need to open up to. And I personally think that it will be good for our society to become a little bit more international and to have a different take on things and therefore have a different scope or approach in the way we look at our society. And I'm thinking that maybe it will even lower the competitive aspect. It will help people see how people in other cultures don't react to things that in the way that we do, because I find that competition is because of that anxiety and wanting to do well. And maybe if we see other people, then we might think, oh, it's okay to not be so anxious. It's okay not to be so, driven all the time, and maybe balance things out a little more.
Looking at other countries, good examples, like in New York, London, Singapore, or Dubai, I would call those cities like a talent magnet cities. They actually have a very vibrant business, like UK is financial hub. All those young, highly professional workers around the globe wants to come to London to work and build their career and family. Creating that type of a hub so that globally mobile professionals choose to come and work, would be a good way to look at solutions. I know that there are some statistics that Korea is one of those countries that have more outflow. But looking at the inflow side, I mean, there's an emerging city like Dubai, which requires infrastructure or even like visas or other conditions for housing, which are also friendly, to the foreign professionals, like would be in place before.
We have to, but we're very used to being the majority of the society, like being unicultural Korea. So I think they still are. There are many people they will go against a big amount of foreign workers, but we have to. I think we have to develop more systems and like we have to create an ambience, create an atmosphere where the foreigners that come to Korea are welcomed. They should be better incorporated in the society. If not, we will have to go through all the similar problems that happens in other multicultural societies in America and Europe. So yes, it is an inevitable situation, inevitable future that's gonna come, and we have to be prepared.
I think definitely my parents' generation and my generation, and even I'm sure your generation, who are more, I guess, used to this globalized community, are more than willing to invite foreigners and interact with them. But if we think about the generation above that have fought the war, that have built Korea from the rumbles of the war, I think that generation is not as open to having foreigners come in because I think they are still traumatized from what they experienced when they were in their 20s and 30s. I think they just want to be a little bit more protective, feel that incubation of our own people, making sure there's enough job spaces not taken by foreigners, schools not taken by foreigners, right? Having that protected incubation for our people is more preferred than completely opening the doors, yeah.
Through our guests, different situations and life circumstances affect women's perspective on giving birth. While the government has been rolling out policies tackling the problem, they have proven to be insufficient for radical and robust change. Despite South Korea's welcoming posture towards migrant workers, not everyone has the same embrace. The country and its people will need to find strategies to balance between conserving traditional values and globalization in the near future.